Welcome back everyone! I noticed we hadn't really been giving you guys some proper mystery videos on the channel, and I thought that needed to change right now. Today we're talking about missing people. Now some of these people were missing a long time ago. Some of them only vanished in the past few years, but all of them left a hole in people's lives and one single unanswered question: what happened to them? It's a question you guys are going to ask yourselves when you hear their incredible stories. Nobody has been able to solve these cases. Perhaps you'll be able to shed some light. My name is Danny Burke and this is the top 10 scary missing person stories. Starting off at number 10 now, we have the Lost Girls of Panama. In 2014, 21-year-old Chris Creamers and 22-year-old Lisanne Froon went for a hike near a mountain resort in Panama. They were never seen again. They were visitors from the Netherlands. Searchers found no trace of them. A few months later, a member of an indigenous tribe found Lisanne's backpack and some of the girl's belongings. There was a camera inside there which had pictures of the girl on their fateful hike. A US-based team were tasked with determining if the girls had died in a tragic hiking accident or were the victims of a brutal murder. The pictures on the camera got stranger as they went on. They became darker as night fell. The last picture simply shows darkness and rocks. It was a total mystery. The leading theory is that they fell off a cliff which injured one of them. The uninjured one then waited with her friend for 8 days before leaving her. The question was, why did she leave her friend? Some people think that she was suddenly scared into leaving, perhaps by a jaguar. In some cases, it seems the pictures have created more questions than answers. Moving on to number 9 now, we have RICO Harris. He's an American former professional basketball player who retired from pro play in 2000. In 2014, he had relocated to Seattle with his girlfriend and applied for a job there. He never arrived. The last time he was heard was from a voice message left to his girlfriend in which he told her he was going to check out the mountains. The call was traced to the Sacramento area and his car was found abandoned in Yolo County Park. That is actually a real place, I double checked. A massive search was launched for RICO, but nothing came up. It was even more baffling because RICO is 6'9". You'd think that somebody would remember seeing a guy that tall, and actually they did. A driver eventually reported seeing a 6'9" guy walking down the highway a mile from where the car was found, but this was a week later. What was going on? The search was relaunched. Massive size 17 footprints were found in the ground that were not there before. They followed them, but they led to nothing. They just kind of stopped. What happened to RICO when he disappeared for a week, and then what happened after he disappeared again, with his footsteps just vanishing into thin air? Next up at number 8 now, we have Ben McDaniel. On August 10th, 2010, employees in a dive shop in Florida found Ben McDaniel's pickup truck. He had been diving regularly at Vortex Springs, but now nobody could find him. He was last seen 2 days before on a dive, entering a cave 58 feet below the water's surface. It was a notoriously hard to navigate cave that only experienced divers were supposed to go in. It was suspected that he had drowned, but investigators couldn't find his body. After the police stopped searching, Ben's parents hired people to go in and look for his body. One of the rescue divers ended up going missing and was never found again. In the years since, the mystery has given way to some pretty dark rumors about Ben faking his own death in order to get out of financial trouble. This was disputed though by the fact that people saw him dive underwater. So what exactly happened? The mystery deepened a year later when the owner of Vortex Springs mysteriously died. Ben's parents are convinced that everything is related. Moving on to number 7 now, we have Susan Powell. She's an American missing person from Utah who disappeared on December 6th, 2009. Eyes turned to her husband Joshua as a person of interest in the investigation. They had a bad marriage. He was reportedly abusive to her and controlling. Before she disappeared, there were reports that Susan was fearing for her life. Then one night, Susan, Joshua and their 2 young boys disappeared. A few days later, Joshua returned with the boys saying he'd been camping with them and claimed to have no idea where Susan was. As the police investigated, Joshua behaved more suspiciously. He eventually moved the boys away to live with his father. In the end, he lost custody of his kids because his own father was found in possession of child pornography. And then it got even more crazy. During a supervised visit, Joshua grabbed his sons from the social worker and took them to his house. Negotiators outside tried to talk him out of there, but it was no use. Joshua eventually blew the house up, killing both he and his boys. With their main suspect gone, investigators had no more leads for the disappearance of Susan and no hope of bringing justice to her and her boys. Moving on now to number 6, we have Jennifer KESSE. She's an American woman who disappeared in Florida on January 23rd, 2006. On that day, she left her workplace after making several calls calls to family and friends. The last one was at 10 p.m. to her boyfriend. The next morning, her boyfriend became worried when he didn't get a text from her. Her phone then went straight to voicemail. Her employer contacted her parents, who then drove 2 hours from their home to hers. They found that her car was missing on the driveway, but everything in her condo seemed to be in place. They found a wet towel and clothes laid out, suggesting that she had showered that morning and prepared to dress for work. They found her car in a nearby parking lot. When they reviewed the security footage of the parking lot, they saw their suspect, but the results were devastating. The suspect was seen walking past a gate, and despite being so close to the camera, it only took one picture every 3 seconds. In every picture, this suspect's face was perfectly obscured by an object. Police couldn't even tell if the suspect was male or female. They described the suspect as the luckiest person of interest in history. In the years since then, the case has felt tantalizingly close to being solved, but it still remains a mystery. Moving on now to number 5, we have the Sodder children. On Christmas Eve 1945, a fire engulfed the West Virginian home of the Sodder family while they slept. The family had 9 children. The parents escaped with 4 of them, but the bodies of the other 5 children were never found. The parents believed that the missing children had survived. They never rebuilt their home and instead converted it into a memorial garden for their missing children. For years, they were convinced that the lack of bones meant their children were still alive out there somewhere. The plot thickened when police learned that George Sodder's truck wouldn't start that night when he tried to drive it near the house and reach the children on the 2nd floor. When they tried to call the fire department, their lines were cut. Very suspicious. The parents suspected arson and thought that the children may have actually been taken by the Sicilian mafia, perhaps in retaliation for George's outspoken criticism of the Italian government at that time. The one surviving daughter and the grandchildren of all the children continue to search for the truth even to this day. Next up at number 4 now, we have STACY ARRAS. This really is a strange one. On July 17, 1981, 14-year-old STACY ARRAS and her father joined a group of 6 people riding into Sunrise High Sierra Camp in California. She told her father she wanted to photograph a nearby lake. He declined to go with her, but a 77-year-old man in the group said he would accompany her. After a while, the man grew tired and stopped for a rest. ARRAS continued to the lake by herself. From back at the camp, the group's tour guide saw her standing on a rock about 50 yards from the trail. She was all by herself. That was the last time anybody saw her. The only trace of her that investigators could find was her camera lens. The case remains a mystery almost 40 years on. How could someone so close to her group become lost forever so quickly? Coming in at number 3 now, we have Bobby Dunbar. This is a creepy and very fascinating one. It all started in 1912 when 4-year-old Bobby Dunbar went missing on a fishing trip in Louisiana with his family. After an 8-month search, police found a man called William Walters who was traveling with a boy that looked a lot like Bobby Dunbar. Walters said that the boy was a son of a friend and that his name was Bruce Anderson. When Bobby Dunbar's parents saw the boy, they said he was their Bobby, and the boy was given back to them. The town had a parade in honor of his return. During the trial that followed, a woman came to defend Walters and said that Bruce was her son and that she had given him to Walters to look after. The court dismissed her testimony, possibly because she'd had 3 children outside of wedlock, sort of unheard of for that time. The case went cold, but then in 2008, 96 years after Bobby's disappearance, one of Bobby Dunbar's granddaughters had a DNA test done. She compared her result to the DNA of Bobby's brothers, and they were not related at all. This means that Bobby Dunbar was probably Bruce Anderson after all, and as for the real Bobby Dunbar, that remains a mystery. Moving on now to number 2, we have Madeleine McCann. This may be a very familiar case to anyone watching from the UK. In 2003, 3-year-old Madeleine McCann disappeared from her bed in a holiday apartment in Portugal. Her parents were dining with friends nearby and had been checking on Madeleine and her twin siblings throughout the evening. Then, at 10 p.m, they returned to find that the twins were there, but Madeleine was gone. Over the next few years, the British and Portuguese police collaborated on a historically publicised investigation. In 2007, the Portuguese police even listed Madeleine's parents as suspects, but later lifted it when the case was archived. Since then, the parents have been relying on private investigators and Scotland Yard to work on the case for them. They continue to investigate to this day, over 11 years after Madeleine's disappearance. And finally, at the number 1 spot now, we have the Ghost Blimp. On August 16, 1942, Lieutenant Ernest Cody took his crew out for a blimp patrol duty from San Francisco to the Farallon Islands. Shortly after, they radioed in that they were going to investigate what looked to them like an oil spill. Hours later, their blimp was found over Daly City, where where, after sideswiping a few houses, it came crashing down. Bystanders rushed into the cockpit to find that nobody was there. The whole crew was gone. The Navy investigated and found that no lifeboats or parachutes were missing, only some life jackets were gone. But other than that, everything seemed to be in perfect order. What happened? Did these men just jump to their deaths? If so, why? Now, because this was all during World War II, some people thought that the Japanese had somehow abducted them as they descended to inspect this oil spill. As the press picked up on the story, it earned the nickname of the Ghost Blimp. In the years since, theories have even included UFO abductions, but I'm not so sure about that. Alright guys, that is all I've got time for in this video. Hopefully you all found that one interesting. You might even have your own theories on what happened to all these people. I'll be down in the comments section as always to discuss all of that with you. Until then, thanks as always for watching. My name is Danny Burke and I will see you all in the next one.